Whoop, sorry to say you'll never be a thing. We opened on a lonely boy looking up at the starry sky for his mother, and no, I don't mean it like that. This is depressing enough as is. Ken was wishing for a little more height, just so they could be a little closer to his mother, as well as be able to ride the roller coaster. Just say that you're a little person, and then don't be too afraid of dealing with the social media backlash to turn you away. And as it just so happened, a shooting star was passing by, and Ken remembered what his scientist mother told him about making wishes on them. I mean, I'm not saying scientists can't believe in a little fantasy, but maybe Ken should have remembered that shooting stars don't last long enough for a full exposition dump. As it turned out, they were actually some him particles that granted his wish, and then some. Well, I'll at least take this over another Ant-Man movie at least. I mean, to this show's credit, they went the extra mile by establishing that the size differences were resulting in the characters speaking slower or faster depending on the point of view. Again, it's a surprisingly little bit of realism for the show, even though they soon after used a scientific megaphone to somehow match up everyone's talking speeds, but whatever, it's still appreciated. And not too surprisingly, Ken's larger size also meant he had a larger appetite, and when the lab's entire food supply didn't suffice, we got a pretty awesome zoom in to a bakery in town. Now, of course, they couldn't afford to let the giant boy genius roam into town, at least not after the mess Dexter and Dee Dee left behind twice. So they tried to turn him back to normal, which didn't work, I'm guessing because 1, Ken was still conscious, and 2, the him particles were strongly tied to his emotions of seeing a certain someone. Don't give Tomoki Sakurai any ideas, dude. Yeah, honestly, it's kind of hard to feel bad for this old perv when Ken gave him a heart attack. Anyway, the girls were deployed to try and act as damage control. Well, to be fair, copper nickel is worth about $9 per kilogram, and hey, if anything else, you could always sell it to this dude. They guided him to a nearby beach where he wouldn't cause any more damage and could get some rest. While sleeping, the girls heard him wishing to see his mother, which gave them an idea. They woke him up to another surprisingly slow shooting star that Ken didn't question, but whatever. It gave him enough mental relief that it dispersed the him particles. And in a touchy moment to end the segment, they revealed what the shooting star actually was. Hey lady, watch out for the characters from life! The next story opened when, all too common occurrence in toy animations, the moon was being destroyed. So the girls broke it. Big deal. This is still a carefree, slice of life little magical girl anime, so I'm sure they'll get off with nothing worse than just a little slap on the wrist. Oh, so there's actual consequences here? Well, okay, you have my interest. So yeah, because they did make the rather stupid decision to have a little race to the moon over who would be the leader of this team, they ended up splitting the moon in two, which while I'm sure that'll make a couple of Symphogear villains happy, the girls were still charged with reckless behavior and were barred from flying ever again. Now this could be a reference to the OG episode Town and Out for a couple of reasons. One obviously being how the girls were barred from using all of their superpowers, especially flying, within the town of Seasville after they recklessly destroyed the bridge. That's for the other parallel, well, we'll get to that in just a minute, but yeah, much like that episode, there was some relatively real fallout for the girls' actions, as not only could they not fly, but their public image had taken a massive nosedive. Now, I wouldn't call either situation realistic, because there should be much worse consequences, especially if you break the moon, but whatever, it still has my interest. And yeah, I know Town and Out is often considered to be one of the less popular episodes of the OG, as it is a bit of a mean-spirited deconstruction of the PPG in a more realistic setting. But I still kind of liked it because it was so different because of the drastic tonal change. Besides, the realistic Powerpuff Girls can be a lot worse. All that said, this sort of story does kind of work better for this show, as not only have we gotten brief glimpses of reality throughout the series, including in this very episode, but it also does kind of commentate a little on Japan's insanely strict judiciary system, where guilty verdicts are pushed to the nth degree, as well as their politicians often being busted for some very shady dealings. Okay, I would care a lot more about politics if we could get guys like this into office for their eventual breakdowns. Yeah, but when has that ever stopped the most trusted news sources in the world? Still, the news about the girls not being able to fly soon caught the ears of their rogues gallery, in particular Mojo, who devised a rather clever plan. For it, he coordinated with the other villains, starting with the Gangrene Gang, which the mayor informed the girls about. Apparently, they were attacking Chiba City, which, if in comparison to the actual Tokyo and Chiba, was about an hour's drive away. Obviously, by flying, the girls could get there a lot faster, but they couldn't do that, nor could they run without causing some damage. Thus, they went by train, and yeah, having been to Tokyo, this is a pretty accurate depiction. Now, this might be another reference to Town and Out, with the girls going to a different location where they couldn't use their powers, and maybe a certain him episode, but that's also going to be a whole other episode in of itself, so probably not. However, after arriving in Chiba, I think they might have referenced a whole other episode altogether, because as it turned out, the villain alert was just a false alarm, as the gang had only eaten and properly paid for a full-course meal at a restaurant there. So yeah, a call from the mayor turned out to be a prank, and it involved the Gangrene Gang. Well, at least this one is a little less controversial. And just like Telephonies, it involved more than one villain, including the Amoeba Boys and Fuzzy, supposedly attacking Nagoya and Hokkaido respectively. Each location, of course, requiring even more traveling for the girls, especially Hokkaido, which is on a different island altogether. And in both cases, they also turned out to be false alarms. However, unlike the OG episode, Mojo turned out to be the real deal. Yep, it was all a rather elaborate plan to both exhaust and get the girls away from Tokyo City. It was pretty well thought out, as Mojo likely even financed the villains' trips and told them they didn't even have to do anything. Meanwhile, even if they used the cheapest routes possible, traveling about 1,700 kilometers between the three locations drained the girls' finances. Thus, they ended up hitchhiking most of the way back to Tokyo City, all the while people start to realize that, yeah, maybe they kind of needed the girls' mood-destroying recklessness and all. Eventually, they did make their way back, but even then, Mojo had equipped his robot with super jump abilities, severely limiting the flightless girls' options. However, a kid named Hayato, who had been a fan of the girls, ripped off their tape restraints, as even though he had been influenced by the mass media's negative campaigns against them, he and everyone else realized what was actually important here. And this renewed support was so great that it somehow led to the government immediately repealing the girls' restrictions. A government acting quickly and confidently, you say? Okay, now y'all stretch my suspension of disbelief beyond repair. Well, whatever. They defeated Mojo, and the episode ended with them thanking Hayato and returning his plushie, as well as fixing the moon with some chemical Z glue, because yeah, I'm sure that'll save us from the anti-spirals. While the first half was just an okay-ish giant character story, the second half was actually a lot of fun, and even felt like it could have acted as a climactic end to the series, which was kind of by design. Yeah, this episode actually marked the end of this show's third core, as even signified by the fact that the fourth and final ending theme would start playing in the next episode. As a result, the latter story was written like a season finale with a bunch of villains cameoing, as well as a little reminder of why we like these characters, warts and all. Throw in arguably a much better version of an OG episode, and you get a nice little bookmark before we enter into the final core of this show. While Honey, I Blew Up the Can was nothing too special, it did at least have some nice moments like some of the comedy, and of course anything involving his mother. The fact she helped resolve the conflict felt like a nice way to wrap up his little character arc of wanting to see her, nicely enough. That said, this show's version of Town and Out and maybe Telephonies was the real highlight. Like most adaptations for this anime, they did kind of cleverly adjust some of the story to more fit into the Japanese setting by kind of commenting on the country's political issues that are often overblown by the mass media, which, yeah, chalk that up as another timeless theme this show ended up having. Though thankfully, it also had a much more hopeful ending of everyone realizing that no matter how much their names had been smeared, they kind of needed the girls. It was an ending that did feel like something out of a Precure episode that the writer Mio Inoue would script for episodes of Heartcatch and Tropical Rouge in the future. That plus cameos from a bunch of villains and just having the girls travel all over Japan gave the story a much grander feeling to it. Thus, overall, while the first half was just heartwarming enough, the second half was in some ways a better deconstruction of this version of the girls without getting too mean-spirited like the original. They're by no means perfect heroines, and if physics did matter, then breaking the moon would cause a lot more damage, but they're still superheroines who will always rise to the occasion as long as politics don't get in the way. I forgot to mention this in last Sunday's Precure review, but we're going to have to delay the next episode review of that series by one day. I've got a relative's wedding to go to, so I'm going to be AFK at least until Sunday afternoon. Though don't worry, we'll still try to get a review out by Monday morning while maintaining our usual release schedule. Still, until then though, farewell for now my friends, and oh, looks like Coral Sense has destroyed the moon. Better go get the scuba gear ready.